Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Monaco Grand Prix. It actually just ended a couple minutes ago. We're doing a quick recording right after the race. How you doing, Rob? You seem to enjoy that a little more than I did today.
No, not at all. I enjoyed it massively more than you did.
There were moments. I enjoyed moments.
I loved it today. And I'll put a complete disclaimer right up at the beginning. Could it maybe have had something to do with maybe my four favourite drivers, as well as the team that I follow, being in the top four for the entire race? Yeah, probably. But me and you've talked about this before. I'm okay to have one race like this on the calendar a year.
Yes.
If everything was like this, you would never watch Formula One ever again. Because if you just come for the overtakes, in fact, I think Seth on our Discord said it perfectly. He enjoys this race as a kind of a one-off, and then he said, but there's a little asterisk against that. I wouldn't put this forward as a race I was trying to show new fans to get them into the sport.
Totally. I was with some friends Wednesday night, and we were chatting about a variety of things. And I said, if you want to watch anything this holiday weekend here in the States, I said, watch the qualy on Saturday. Don't watch the race on Sunday. But I also, I'm a Charles fan, so I literally my eyes welled up too at the end. But we'll get to that.
We'll get there, yeah. So we've got anyone who's new to the pod, then welcome, and we will have our regular roundup of news and social. We will then pull apart the... then we'll jump into the video vault. Look at me getting ahead of myself. Then we'll jump into the race weekend. We're recording so quickly after this that I don't think Fantasy will have updated. And then we'll try and work out what we might be talking about next week because we've got no race. So let's jump in at the beginning. Do you want to take this one? Because this is the one that makes you... I was excited, but you were beside yourself. This is like the Charles winning Monaco moment for you,
This
right?
has been a great week for me as a Formula One fan. So we've talked a lot about it on the pod and in the video vault. The P1, Internet's Best Reactions, formerly, best Twitter reactions on WTF1 that Matt Gallagher has done forever. And we've talked about how much I enjoy and kind of close the race weekend by watching that before I go to sleep every Sunday night. And I think it's just hilarious. That said, I do run the Dirty Side Twitter account, which is why it gets so quiet during the week at times, because Rob and I are busy. But anyway, I sent out a note last weekend, a tweet, commentators trying to make the battles at Imola interesting for the first 20 laps, because they kept talking about all these different battles that didn't matter and weren't actually happening. And I had a GIF of actually a Chicago guy, Spice Adams, who played for the Bears, shooting threes and missing wildly. And I tagged P1, and we made the show. That's right. We, the Dirty Side of the Track pod, made the show.
Let me tap out here a second, Brian.
Yeah.
So just so that everyone goes on the same kind of little roller coaster that I went on. First of all, I get a frantic call from Brian on WhatsApp, which usually he just rings me out of the blue. I'm like, oh, what's going on? What's going on? He's like, Matt liked my tweet. I'm like, what? Who's Matt? And he's like, oh, yeah, Matt, Internet's Best Reactions. I tagged them, they liked the tweet. And then he does his normal thing where he then tries to play everything down and go, well, I'm sure he likes loads of the tweets, and just because he liked it doesn't mean that we'll be on the video. But it's amazing that we actually got liked. But yeah, probably won't be on the video. So he's bouncing back and forth between Tigger and Eeyore at this point. And then what was it, about an hour later when the video dropped? An even higher pitched Brian. If my George in Canada last year went off the radar, then this was way up there with that, where we'd made the video and Brian, it was just like all his birthdays had come at once. It was just, you were so excited. I was as well, on behalf of you. I love that video thing as well, but you followed it for a lot longer than I have. So yeah, it was amazing that we got called out. There we were. Dirty Side on the video, our tweet there. Brilliant.
I mean, if you could find the intersection, the 3-street intersection of my love of Formula One, my love of memes, and the way Matt Gallagher puts them together, and it all came together in the perfect place, and it started the week off huge. Oh man! And then Charles wins, and I was shedding a tear, and oh boy, we'll get there. Oh, so that is how the week started. But then we saw some other news that was kind of interesting, right? The Andretti F1 bid. They've talked about the number of people they employ. They've opened various facilities and the things they're doing in the driver academy. They're starting to build to become ready for F1. Even if we heard later this week that certain people don't want them in F1. That said, they hired Pat Simmons from F1. And what's fascinating to me is, A, he knows the regs inside and out. He's the technical director at Formula One, and he basically helps build the regs. So he knows them inside and out. But as we have talked about, For some reason, I cannot. I have a mental... I'm stuck with the fact that he was one of the 2 people from Renault in Singapore 2008 in Crashgate who was banned from the sport at the time until a French court overturned it that he could come back. And then he went to the bastion of F1, like the home office, and now he's hired by Andretti. I just can't forget that, and I don't know why I can't get over that. I try to be a bigger person, but I'm not, apparently.
Well, maybe, if you really want to do benefit of the doubt, maybe, as all the facts came to light, he wasn't as directly involved in the whole thing as everyone thought. Because if he really was, and let's say he was like the head honcho that kind of almost pulled together and formulated Crashgate, then how the heck do you stay in the sport? But anyway,
wasn't Flavio Briatore, the team principal, also suspended forever, then also let back in?
Yeah, I think so.
So no one was really ever suspended forever?
No.
Okay. Except Nelson Piquet Jr., basically.
Yeah, basically. Then we got the livery reveal. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ferrari, take note. If you announce that you're going to do a special livery, then make sure it's special. And I'm just going to say
just
McLaren.
A blue sponsor logo?
No, just a blue spot, yeah. McLaren knocked it out of the park. Absolutely. And they found a genius way to pick the right colour scheme. Everybody was wanting the red and white. And there were a few renderings of the classic red and white McLaren, but everyone was also kind of going, problem is they'd have to paint all of the exposed carbon, and the car's going to be heavier. They made a big deal of having that much exposed carbon on their car. So they put together the yellow and green, but in a way that allowed the black carbon to still be exposed. And chef's kiss. Loved it. Absolutely.
I loved it too. This is a hard thing for me to say. I'm over the Senna tributes. It's been like 3 weeks in a row of nonstop Senna down our throat everywhere we turn. He's one of the greatest drivers of all time, but we did the whole thing at Imola. We talked about his death and what he meant, and then we went to Monaco, where he was the king of Monaco. And okay, I'm good now.
Oof.
I know, unpopular opinion.
Yeah,
but I'm one of those people. There were a few of us out there. It's like, we love him and respect him. It's been 3 solid weeks of nothing but Senna.
Oh well, I think we'll move quickly on from that point.
So, let's do it.
Williams decided to go, well, I'm not even going to call it a special livery. It really wasn't. They just added the Duracell bunny to the back of the battery. So
I didn't even know this. I didn't know what your little note that they did.
Did you not? You'll have to Google it and see on the where the battery is. There's kind of the little bunny with his fist out in front, like he's like in a Superman flying pose, and the bunny was on the back. Yeah, that shows how much we saw a Williams today to even realise.
What worked for Albon?
True. Then we started getting into some kind of a couple of driver rumours. It's all kind of quieting down a little bit while we wait for the dominoes to drop. But all of a sudden, it sounds like Mercedes aren't sniffing around Sainz anymore. They've kind of dismissed that one. So you're like, well, where's Sainz going to go? Is it Valtteri that's going to be the thing that makes the things topple? Because he's been sniffing around and apparently talking to different, we mentioned last week Williams. I think he's also on Alpine's radar as well. So maybe it's Valtteri that moves and Sainz just goes into Sauber if he can't get a better offer elsewhere. Is he just keeping them as his plan B, that he knows he's probably got a 20? Well, I'm pretty much sure he's guaranteed a 26 drive there. Is he just holding off for a better team for 25 and then see what happens?
Maybe. I don't know. But it does sound like you said Merck moved on from Carlos. And then as Checo had just a terrible quali, I put a note in here that basically said, does this mean Red Bull rethinks Carlos? Do they kind of say, oh my God, if we got a guy in one of our cars who can't get out of Q1? And like you said, the whole Valtteri situation at Williams, but then I heard about Carlos potentially at Williams, and then we heard about Yuki potentially at Haas out of nowhere. That didn't make a lot of sense. And then the story about Checo countering Red Bull, and he wants a 2-year deal. Speaking of coming from a position of not power, it's just fascinating to see what's going to happen. I cannot wait to see a silly season continues.
Yeah, and then I've got some bits that are kind of a little bit out of order here. They're probably actually, some of them happened over the race weekend, but, let's go through. So I saw a meme the other day, probably yesterday, I guess, which said Mazepin arrives in Monaco. And it just showed this boat barreling through the harbour and crashing between 2 boats, right? I was like, okay, that's funny. Yeah, Mazepin arrives in the harbour and crashes his speedboat. Okay, funny joke, move on. And I just assumed that clip was from ages ago. And then the photographer, Australian photographer Kim Illman, was on the dock today, did a video saying, right, here's how it all went down. They showed the whole clip again. Yeah, apparently some water taxi guy has almost like fallen forward on the throttle. It's taken off so fast, he's fallen out the back of it.
No.
And this boat has just gone unmanned through the middle of the harbour, or the marina, smashed between two boats and come out of the water and up onto the top with the engine still running, spinning. One of the dudes has had to run over there and pull the kill switch to stop it all. And basically, nobody got injured, and two of the boats that got hit were mildly scratched. I mean, talk about luck, but...
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I didn't see that either.
Go and have a look at Kim Illman's Instagram feed, and you'll kind of see his little
I
video.
have a video vault from Kim Illman
so.
today. This is the most we've ever talked about this guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
We almost could have met him. Sorry, we could have met him at Canada, but we couldn't be bothered to walk round to the far side of the track where he was hosting the meet and greet. But, yeah. Anyway.
We walked around all over that track.
Yeah, we did. We'd done the walking around, and we got back, and I saw the feed from other people that were meeting him. I was like, oh, that's where we've just come from. Yeah. Right. Then my buddy Rohan, who lives in Monaco, he lives in an apartment block as they come round the hotel hairpin and they're dropping down towards the tunnel. That way you see a lot of photographers behind the barrier there. That's his apartment. That's where he
awesome.
lives.
I didn't know he lived there because he gave us some shots last year, right?
He did. And I got the whole thing starting up again this year with all these pictures of all the cars coming past. And it kind of struck me. I was like, aren't you trapped, though? Because your apartment there is on the inside of the circuit. So what actually happens? And he said, oh, yeah. As the residents, we get the special resident general admission tickets. They get tickets to go wherever they want around the inside of the track. You know, they don't get paddock passes, but they essentially get issued general admission tickets so they can wander around, use the exit bridges to get out and go and get their groceries, I guess, then try and come back again. But yeah, what a place to live, hey? I mean, it's an amazing place 364 days of the year, but this day alone must be absolutely
Can you imagine
insane.
that? You go to the store for some Pop-Tarts and Cheetos and you walk back in the middle of practice?
I'm sure that's what they eat in Monaco, Pop-Tarts and Cheetos. But...
yeah, it's got to be, I assume. I mean, doesn't that fuel everybody?
And then the best thing, the running joke of the weekend that I've just tweeted out now, the one that ESPN put up there straight away, is the father and son, Piastri and Charles. Did you see all of this? Were you too busy this week to see it?
No, I saw that, and then I saw Piastri's mom got involved.
Oh, it was brilliant. So I think I assume it's because when he arrived at Piastri at the beginning of the week and loved the place so much, I guess, he just put a tweet out there saying, I'm searching my family tree to find any trace of Monegasque roots, because I think you can't buy property in Monaco. You have to basically be a citizen, and you can get it that way, but you can't come from outside and buy it. You could rent, but you can't buy. Yeah, okay. I heard this. Yeah, you can't buy unless you are Monegasque. So,
well, he also had tweets at the last few races where he was, 1/16 Italian. Piastri ends in a vowel, and he had So he had that in Imola, and he's been highlighting. So I thought that was the reason he did it.
Might well be as well, but I saw a video of him wandering around, like looking at the views and all this kind of stuff, and wanted to potentially be there. But anyway, Charles responded to that tweet and said, "I can adopt you if needed." Well, of course, that just went to an absolute running joke then, that it was Oscar was going to be Charles's son and all the various different memes that came out. But it went so far that the F1 official channel got on it, not just the tweets, but the actual F1. Because in FP1, where they put out the practice classification, Lewis Hamilton first, ahead of Oscar Piastri Leclerc with a double-barreled surname in position number 2. I mean...
I love it.
I love it. I love it when they don't have to be so uppity that even the establishment isn't above kind of getting involved in some of these jokes. So
we talked about this 2-3 weeks ago when F1 did some rain wheel cover tests on the Ferraris, and we were debating whether that would be helpful or not, and whether they needed truck driver mud flaps, and why weren't they actually doing anything with where all the spray was actually coming from the diffusers. And it turned out F1 listens. So I would say to Pat Simmons, the technical director, but he's moved on since then. So to F1, thanks for listening. We were right. Those things didn't do jack. So they've abandoned the test.
Yep. Now, did you see this? Have you seen the Formula 2 clip?
Yes. I got this a lot. A lot of folks sent me this. This is a good one.
Oh, my gosh. So Formula 2 driver Isaac Hadjar has basically got reflexes better than Spider-Man. Because he comes into the tunnel, and Tiomo Miata had a power unit issue and was in the tunnel going slowly on the inside, so he's hugging the inside of the wall, which meant that it's blind. As you're coming into the tunnel at pace, you can't see anybody that's hugging the inside. And he comes in full speed, comes around the corner. There's the car. I mean, you're just crashing. That is crash now. Crash. Somehow flicks the car left and misses it by, inches. I mean, that could have been absolutely
It was epic. It actually looked fake. The clip looks fake until you see it from the onboard, and you're like, oh my God, how did he do that?
Oh my gosh, very, very lucky that I always think about that somebody gets into trouble in the tunnel, especially at the beginning of the tunnel. I know it looks worse on TV when the cameras have to adjust for the light, but you are going from bright light into darkness, and there is that moment where you probably can't see much. If he'd have been there, if it had been a little bit earlier in the tunnel, I wonder if he would have adjusted his sight in time to have that reflex. I don't know, but yeah, very scary. And then last but not least, on the Discord, Johnny Boy put a request on there to say, could I get a shout out for Aaron and Lindsay, who just got married? They're Ferrari fans who are having their heads turned by Oscar. So, sorry, Johnny Boy, no, they can't have a shout out this week.
It's good. We got a letter today in the office from Johnny Boy. Let me read it, and then we're not going to do it. That's perfect. So we're going to shift to the video vault this time. And by the way, yes, Aaron and Lindsay, many congrats. Many congrats. All right, so we have 4 videos of note. One is Lollipop Man's Imola review, which was funny as always. It's one of those 3 things I always talk about when they're good: Lollipop Man moving bricks and Maddie P1's Internet's Best Reactions, which of course we were on last week, so go back and check it out. It's about 10 minutes and 30 seconds in. I'll have to download the sound and play that next time. I didn't think of that. But so, Rob, you had a note on this one that you wanted to start the video vault.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer on it, but it's kind of like, has he had a paid partnership video before? Or when he has, have they just been a lot more low-key? Because this really hit me in the face, where this was in a paid partnership with, what's it called, F1 Clash or something? I guess
something like
a
that.
Game? I guess it's a game, right? So, okay, great. Good for him. Or her, Lollipop Man. I guess it's a man.
We'll assume, but we don't know.
It could be Lollipop Woman and in disguise. But obviously made it big enough now to be getting picked up by things like this. So absolutely not kind of sort of trying to downplay this. Good for them. Great to have got this. But my word, was it sponsored. Like, it was almost like they spent more time making sure they got that reference in every single camera. What are they called? Every single scene. You couldn't move without having that sponsorship rammed down your throat. So, like I say, good for them, but wow, that was a lot.
Yeah, but if someone came to us and said we had to get tattoos on our butt cheeks of something, we would do that in a heartbeat for the money. So that means our doors are open. If you're looking to sponsor the Dirty Side, give us a call.
Brian's trousers are open by the sounds of things for getting his butt cheeks tattooed. But,
done. So one of the videos I wanted to highlight was from Kim Illman, and I watch some of his stuff every so often, and I find it whatever. But the Monaco F1 Billionaire's Harbor, he goes through some of the boats, and it's fun just to kind of see a little bit about the boats that are there. And he walks through some. He got invited on one, and he talks about some of the parties. But he had the sickest burn I've ever seen in my life on a video channel that's trying to be proper. He cuts to some of the team's boats, and he shows RBs and Red Bulls and other boats, Mercedes boats. And then he sees a dinghy that says Williams on the side. There must be a company who makes dinghies called Williams. And he goes, and the Williams boat is struggling a little. And it's like a guy in a dinghy. I'm like, damn, Kim Illman. I took a picture of it, and I couldn't quite figure out how to make it work on Twitter, so I just left it on my phone. Then this is an old one. We are all about the freshness here on the Dirty Side. We don't normally do videos more than a week old, but I had to do this partially just for me. But the lap of the Formula One circuit in Monaco during a non-race day from David Clouda, 8 minutes 30 seconds. It's just fun. It's 8 years old, but I'm going to be there in about 5 weeks. And he basically drives the circuit, and now I have to do this. And so one morning before my family wakes up, I may even set my alarm early. And I will have a rental car at this point of the trip. For most of it, I don't. I will get into the car, and I will go attempt to drive the Monaco circuit. And I'll see if I can do it better than Kevin Magnussen and not crash into anybody.
I mean, two things. Just from walking it on foot, good luck, because obviously it doesn't look anything like that when
right. Well, that's why I watched this video. Like, I made a wrong turn into Casino Square in my mind. I'm like, where's he going? But he got it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And can you actually physically properly drive it? Or are there any one-way sections in there prevent you? If he did it, then I'm sure you must be
by the
able to.
marina. You're off a bit because that's not where the track is, the road is. But
That's right. Yeah, I knew you couldn't fully do it, so
it'll be close.
Yeah,
I may give it a try. We'll see. I don't know how I'll film it. I may just stick my phone to my head.
Yeah, dash cam, and just off you go.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna carry a dash cam around Europe.
No, use your phone as a dash cam, you idiot. Like, put it on there, stand it up, film it, off you go.
And then
get some like Grand Tour style commentary as you're driving along.
Power,
Exactly.
Hammond, you idiot. And then the last video, Lando Norris plans the most epic journey to the Monaco Grand Prix on the Hilton channel. I'm back, baby. I'm back. I had time on Friday night, and I found this on the Hilton channel from this week. It's 3 minutes long. So apparently Hilton opened their first hotel in Monaco, the Columbus Hotel Monte Carlo Curio Collection by Hilton. And I swear to God, I hope that's not the full name you have to use every time you check in or out. And so it was just Lando and Arav, who's a friend of his, a streamer who I didn't know was part of qualy. I knew him from his streaming. And so Arav and him did this video, and it was a lot of fun, so check that out. But none of these I thought were must-watches again, in my opinion. And on that, we're going to close the vault and get to practice.
Well, practice I think we can do in about 30 seconds. I wrote my notes here, and it was like I got almost like a sentence for each one. FP1. I'm figuring that if you pay for advertising, you probably don't want to be on the barriers, especially at corners where they kiss them, because we just saw posters getting shredded all over the place.
Yeah, center vot, you don't want to be in the first corner because they're just sucking it off with their tires.
We got a red flag after Zhou lost an M plate, and of all the cars in all the world that could be right behind that when that happened to hoover up the M plate and get it stuck under their floor, who could it be other than Charles Cursed Leclerc, who I'm thinking, is this the curse starting to kick in already at this point, that if there's any luck about, it's going to be bad luck for Charles. But as we now know, that didn't happen. But yeah, I was kind of thinking, FP2 Charles was on it and was top of the leaderboard. FP3 Bottas binned it and couldn't do any running. That's my practice summary, unless you've got anything to add there, Brian.
I didn't see any practice, so thank you, Rob. Let's move to quali.
Right, okay, so quali. Now, I'm going to let you lead on this because I know you basically, this is your moment, right?
This is it.
You love Saturday qualifying.
Oh, man, I love it. This is my favorite thing. I was set up. I had snacks. I had drinks. I was just so excited. I could not have been more excited for this. And so as the times start, Q1, they weren't all that fast, curiously, and for anybody. So it wasn't like everyone was on, 98% power mode. No one was really putting in bangers. And so
do you think they'd all got together beforehand and just gone, everyone okay for just a sort of a warm-up lap? Like, no one push it and make anyone else look stupid? Yeah, okay, done.
Well, Vowles was saying, that it looked like the track just wasn't ready. The evolution would be stronger than usual, just based on temperature, and the races before may have actually scrubbed off some of the rubber. I'm like, what? I thought that's how it worked. But anyway, lots of shots of the wags. Oh, that was great. The wives and girlfriends. That was, you couldn't have had a better quali. And then you see Checo and Lando in danger as they're going around, and it turned out to be true for Checo. Lando put in a good lap at the end. We lost some folks we expected, but Alonso was the surprise. The downgrades at Aston Martin have been fantastic. They have taken them from near the top handful of teams to now near the bottom handful of teams.
And if you... Oh, no, sorry, I was going to say, and if you wanted a window into two drivers at the moment and what separates them, you got Checo and Lando both in danger of not making it through to Q2. So now you have to put in a good lap with traffic. You just got to make it happen regardless of what you come up against. Lando nailed it. Under massive pressure, he just goes and nails a lap easily through to Q2. Checo, not so much.
It was, and there was no problem. Like, there was he didn't get interfered with.
He just didn't hook a lap up.
Right.
When it mattered, he couldn't do it.
I mean, this has to be, that's just terrible for his chances of staying there. I know we've heard, that Red Bull's going to keep him for next year. I don't know if I would, but that's a different topic for another time. We go to Q2. And the Aston Martin of Stroll did out-qualify Alonso, but he went out quick. We lost K-Mag, Ricciardo, Hulk, and Ocon. And I didn't even cover everyone in the first, but we lost both Saubers, who did not look fast around this track, Logan, and we already talked about Checo and Alonso. What that means, though, and I had to do a little bit of research on this, is that Pierre Gasly made Q3. And Pierre Gasly quietly had himself a hell of a weekend.
Yeah.
He finished in the points. He got to Q3. And you may say, is Alpine back? I would ask you this question, though. We've talked a lot about Alpine. Not back, but are they doing better? We've talked a lot about Alpine. They have a power unit problem. Their car is overweight. I know it's been brought down, and it's not aero fast. This is the slowest circuit on the F1 calendar by 20 miles an hour. Yeah. So the only place they had a chance was where everybody was slow. So basically their deficiency was minimized because the track is so slow. So as I'm sitting there and they're getting all excited about Pierre's lap, I'm excited for the gas man. But as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, this is their chance. I mean, this is it. The second slowest track on the calendar, by the way, while I was doing the research, is Singapore. So hold on, and maybe we'll see, that those may be their tracks where they can do stuff. We'll see.
Yeah, so then we got into Q3, and all of a sudden I wasn't as confident Leclerc was going to get it because the pace that had been there all week so far, and also more the lack of pace that McLaren had all fooled us with. The FP1, FP2, you don't read anything into that. FP3 though, there's normally a showing, and McLaren looked to be struggling here, so much so that I thought my prediction midweek of having two of them on the podium was just going to be laughable, that they were going to be like midfield team because maybe even Mercedes had gone past them, judging by the FP3 pace. So, Oscar's putting a flying lap in there. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where has this come from? I'm like, he's not going to get it, is he, Charles? He's not going to get pole. But then, yeah, absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, he did. And Charles was looking good the whole weekend. And so he just kept that going in quali. Like you say, though, McLaren caught a lot of us out. I didn't think they'd be this good based on the practices. And so it was interesting. Max looked to be in for a tough race, and he ended up being in for a tough race in sixth. And I'd written Fernando and Checo might as well just do not start because it ain't going to matter for them. And Checo Fernando did a good job. He moved up to, 11th, I think, at the end. But Checo he should have maybe not started. Yeah, and my prediction, which I was... I made it this week before practices and everything. I made it Monday night, was that Charles would win his home race for the first time ever. And I was doing that with heart, not head. And so when he took pole, and I'm like, oh, hang on, we have a chance here for possibly one of my greatest predictions ever. We'll talk if I got that right in a minute.
Prediction ever.
What'd you say?
When you nailed all three was your greatest prediction ever.
Or when I called the Grand Slam for Max out of the blue.
Yeah, those two would both outweigh this one.
No way!
I think you only got 1 out of 3 this week, didn't you?
But I got the big one. I called him breaking the curse. Come on now. You don't think that's as good as the other two?
No, I think the Grand Slam was your single best call ever. That was just amazing. The Grand Slam doesn't happen very often, so to call it in advance, that was genius. Last race's Imola's getting the podium in the right order. That's pretty cool as well. Oh. I'm going to put this up there. It's on the podium of your predictions, definitely. But I think it's
because then all the rest are crap. So
so then we get to race day. Lights out and away you go for about 30 seconds. And it actually started off. We all got a little bit sidetracked by something else that happened. So great start by everybody up the hill, round the corner to Casino. Sainz has obviously tagged Piastri that we didn't really see, but we all realise it the moment he tries to turn right and the car says no thanks, and he goes off down the little side road. And suddenly then we see, I think it's Leclerc and Piastri down out of the tunnel going towards the swimming pool, and the red flag comes up on the screen. I'm like, oh, what's happened? Has Sainz tried to turn around and come back into traffic or something?
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, just to get Sainz's car out of there, they couldn't do a VSC or something? Yeah. It was near the exit anyway. And then, like you say, then they cut to carnage.
They cut to sort of like, it was like, in my head I'm waiting to go and see that Sainz's car is marooned somewhat or tagged somebody trying to come back onto track, and my little brain is not expected to see bits of F1 car strewn as far as the eye can see, with Perez's car shaved down to what is the minimum viable piece of the survival cell. There's like no bits left on it at all.
I actually was, when they showed it and we hadn't seen anything, I was worried someone was hurt. Like Checo. At first I'm like, oh God, do we have, I thought he'd been in the air. How do you lose all your wheels and wings and everything? And it's just like the survival cell. It reminded me of, since the Indy 500 is about to start in a few minutes here, it reminded me of an Indy 500 years ago where the guy's legs were hanging out the cockpit after he crashed. I'm like, I'm expecting something horrendous. And it was great. Then I noticed he was walking around. I'm like, oh, thank God, that's Checo. He's up and out walking around, so we're okay. But what in the world happened? And then they showed the replays. And I'd like your opinion on this, Rob. I'd very much like your opinion on this. I think this is 100% on Kevin Magnussen. You don't think so?
No, and I'll tell you what. You say why, and then I'll say why I don't.
Okay.
Or that's it. That's just your
no,
your stake in the
I
ground,
have
so.
logic and reasoning.
Okay.
So you've got Nico on the left. You got Checo in front of both, and then you got K-Mag on the right. And 3 cars cannot go through that track in that fashion. And you clearly know, and Magnussen, and I'm using his Canadian name because he may not, I don't think he should race in Canada. I think he did this on purpose to avoid being called Magnussen. And so he decides to go for a gap that will not exist shortly. And if you're Checo, everyone wants to put some of this on Checo. I don't understand why, because he's looking at both mirrors, and there's a Haas on each side of him. And so he has literally nowhere to go. I don't think there's a thing he can do because he's got both of them. And Nico had been there before. Kevin was the one who charged up the inside, got a better turn out of the corner. So if I'm Checo, I'm defending Nico. I don't think Kevin's even going to do anything about it because he's coming out of nowhere. It'd be a dumb thing to do. He sees him, he looks, and he goes, and he's still behind him, and he goes, oh, I got to be fine. And he has to jink a little bit to the right to kind of get the straight line up the thing. I think this is all on K-Mag, personally.
So, and I was with you. I was with you until they did the SkyPad replay, and
Right.
Jenson Button was like 100%. This is K-Mag's fault, and then he said, "Look, watch. I bet Checo doesn't even know he's there. K-Mag's going for a gap that doesn't exist, and Checo won't even expect him to be there."
I saw this part.
I bet when we have a look at the replay, he won't even look in his. And then as he's almost finishing that sentence, you see Checo look to his right and be able to clock that he's absolutely there. And then Jenson's like, "Okay. I mean, if I'm K-Mag, I'm still getting out of there because there's a gap closing that I'm not going to have soon, but." If I'm Checo, there is actually space on the replay. There is space to the left of him to Nico. Nico's not right up against him.
But he didn't know that, and Nico was behind him
he checked both
leaving
mirrors. He checked
center
both
of
mirrors, right? So,
but he was bright.
He's got slight left. He's got a slight gap to his left. He's got 0 to his right with K-Mag like right up by his rear wheel because they're side by side, as in front wheel and back wheel are kind of side by side, right?
Right.
So why does Checo move to the right there? I know he's looking at the racing line, but it's like...
The racing line moves him to the right because you cut those, you don't follow the weaves in the road.
I agree, but like Jensen said, why wouldn't I just go slightly off the racing line on the left a little bit to avoid the contact?
And again, Nico was closer leaving the first corner, and I think he was defending Nico and didn't expect Kevin to be on such a charge. And I think he was trying to give Nico room, is what I'm guessing.
I mean, so I would say I'm probably going to go like 80-20, maybe even 70-30. K-Mag's fault.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm willing to share it, but I'd go...
And had it been for that kind of look in the mirrors, I'm just basically being a sheep here and following Jenson Button, because he's raced and I haven't, which is the whole... He was 100% throwing this on K-Mag until he saw that on board, and you could see him visibly change his whole stance on this and going in his head. I think he wanted to say out loud, what the F is Checo doing there of drifting over to the right a little bit? Well, he just checked to see where the car is. He won't have magically disappeared when you move over to the right. And,
agreed. I would go 85-15.
Yeah, some
K-Mag
sort of...
Checo. I mean, but either way, Checo didn't cover himself in glory this weekend.
No.
I think we can
so then we
agree
get
on that.
carnage everywhere. Poor old Hulkenberg got caught up in it, and he almost escaped. On the onboard, it almost looks like he makes it, and then he just gets tagged by a rebounding Perez off the barrier and is gone. My favourite onboard was Zhou, that just kind of comes up on the whole situation. Goes, I think I'm going to park back here for a while. There was just carnage in front of him. So we got red flag, took a while. During the red flag, I'm kind of working out that you've probably had an absolutely awful fantasy week because Haas getting, we didn't even talk about this, Haas then got disqualified from qualifying because they had a new part on their rear wing and they didn't measure the DRS gap properly. They measured it in the middle to make sure it complies with the 85 millimeters or whatever it is, but they forgot to check each end and they were found to be having too wide a DRS gap at each end. Both cars disqualified. Didn't even have to be let to race, but common sense allows them to enter the race. But
good, because then I can get more negative.
I was going to say, that was minus 15 a pair. So you were minus 30 from the disqualification. And then both Haas DNF. What's that, minus 10 each again?
I think it's 20 each.
Was it 20? So you potentially Haas have basically gift wrapped you minus 70 this week.
No. Yes.
Minus 30 for the D. For
Yeah,
the
I think.
disqualification.
I'm not sure if those are the correct numbers, but yes, I may have just gone minus 70. The season has ended, my friend.
You should write a strongly worded letter to Magnussen. And then it still wasn't over. Then there was still more drama to come out.
And then they cut to another one. Like you're saying, we didn't even know about this other one.
All of a sudden, we've got an Alpine airborne. I'm like, what the heck is going on there? And what absolutely astounds me about these cars is how far into the air they can get thrown by what looks like minimal contact, just the wheels rubbing together. So Ocon decides to send one up the inside of Gasly. I mean, oh my gosh, we'll come to the aftermath of that in a minute. Doesn't quite make it. The opposite, rotation, I guess, of the wheels or whatever, just kind of sends Gasly like visibly 6 foot.
Ocon up in the air. Yeah,
Ocon, sorry.
And he comes down, and his car is obviously not going to be ready to race after that, after slamming into the ground. Gasly is frustrated because he had good qualifying and was 10th, and Ocon was 11th, and Ocon went inside Portier. That did not make sense. Alpine on Alpine crime, as I like to call it. And then I do want to close this one, though. They gave him a 10-second penalty. They announced it when he was in his jeans, walking away down the pit lane. And I figured that'd be a 3-place grid drop, which is kind of the normal grid drop for the next race when you get a penalty. They gave him a 5.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Did the head of Alpine have a word? He was massively angry when we talk about this later. When the when the
he was. He may have actually told them give him extra. No. So anyway, I just got to say this. We'll talk about the race now. Well, you can, and I'll follow along. But Kevin Magnussen, who I'm putting 85% of the blame on for that crash, ruined the race. And hear me out. Rob didn't agree with this when I first said it in our notes back and forth. Because of the red flag caused by Magnussen, everybody got to change their tires. And that meant there was no pit stop drama for anybody who mattered. And Lewis had pulled so far ahead of Yuki that he had a free pit stop. He pulled that pin, took it. Max, on the next lap, said, okay, I have a free pit stop, took his free pit stop. And Brundle later said we'd see if tires mattered more than track position. It turned out it didn't. George never pitted from mediums for 75 or 6 laps. So the top 10 started and finished in the exact same order. And not just that, they were the same order the whole race because there was no pitting and someone cutting you. Lewis pitted from 7th, was 7th the whole time he was in the pits, came out 7th. Max did the same thing from 6th. Nobody changed order an iota, not even during a pit stop. And I love, Monaco's boring. We know that. Rob, like you said, we walk in eyes wide open. We love the pomp and circumstance, the glamour, the glitz, the wags, the whole deal. It's fantastic. But when the pit stops don't even matter, there's no undercut, there's no risk of anything happening. The top 10...
That is where I'm
so
going to
I'm turning it to you. I'm done until we get to the end of the race, so go for it.
I know I would agree with you with everything you said, right? So the pit stops being negated took away a little bit of what we could have in terms of track position. So I'm with you on that completely. However, to then say there's absolutely nothing, and I know I'm strange on this opinion, but I like Monaco, and I like Monaco because of the whole driver needing to be precision perfect for 78 laps, right? So to say that nothing, every single lap there is the chance that someone's going to clip a wall and be out or overshoot one of the corners and end up down some escape lane where they're driving off to Italy. So there's always that. So what I thought was intriguing today was the whole, for the first part of the race, was that whole, and I have to applaud Ferrari for this because we give them so much abuse every time they've messed everything up, but they caught on to the fact real early that you can't just drive off into the distance and try to bring this race home, Charles, because if you allow an 20-second window to appear between Norris and Russell, you are giving Norris a free pit stop late in the race to come hunt you down on maybe softs. So you've got to back those guys up so that we keep that distance to George at maximum about 17 seconds, which means you're constantly allowing Piastri to be in your DRS and always at jeopardy of him maybe throwing one up the inside. Because even if he doesn't make it stick, 21-year-old Piastri, we know, is likely to have a go, and you don't want to lose the lead by being crashed out at the front by Piastri going throwing one up the inside and you both going out, right? So I actually did enjoy that whole front for what's going to happen here as part of the pull away happening. And it developed for me. I mean, as then when Lewis and Max pulled the pin and went in, I felt for poor old George. I was like,
me too.
Oh man, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Here, do you also pit? And then if you do, the front four have now got a complete up in the air as to what the hell happens now. Because once George is out of the equation, it's free pit stop season at the front. But could anybody really want to pull the pin first? But if he doesn't, then he's going to get hunted down. And to your point, it was Brundle said, we'll find out now which is more important, track position or fresh tyres. So I enjoyed watching all of that unfold and seeing if they could actually, those front four could actually hold it together for the entire race. So I know you didn't, but...
So here's the thing. Maybe you have, and I can't disagree with your opinion. Like, I understand where you're coming from. I'm the same guy for the last year and a half who said, just ignore Max in the front and, like, watch the rest of the 19 drivers because... and you know what? I found joy and humor and fun in that. So I can make the best of a I almost used a bad word. I can make the best of a bad sandwich, like anybody. But so as you do that, you get used to looking for silver linings. And I know what you're saying, and I followed the same stuff, and I kept saying the same thing. It ain't going to matter. George's timing and the gap to Lando, and if he did change his tires, and if anyone, it ain't going to matter. Track position matters in Monaco. It ain't going to matter. And it didn't. None of it mattered. Not a single lick of the things you watched for came to play or mattered. And I'm with you. It was, that was the entertainment value. But when they come on the radio and tell Charles to slow down repeatedly, and he's the leader of the race, I'm like, oh. And he wasn't managing tires. He was managing the gap.
Yes,
so it wasn't even like...
Which was amazing. It was a perfect strategy of how to bring... we beat Ferrari up for Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, and all this kind of stuff. But that was executed brilliantly today by Ferrari.
See, now I'll let you go, but I just want to say the next thing I would talk about would be all the way to lap 54 when Valtteri made the first on-track overtake and one of the only ones all day. But before 54, is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I don't have Jack.
Oh, see, and then we saw Alonso being a great team player.
Yeah, that's true.
By backing up the pack. So you had all these little things going on where you've got, again, it was about the fact that could the mediums hold on for the entire race? I actually was surprised they did. When everybody was moaning about graining by about lap 43 on the mediums, I thought and Lewis was annoyed at the whole decision right at the beginning because we probably didn't cover this, but because those tyre, like Brian was saying earlier, because the tyres mattered, the change, you didn't have to pit stop now. What that meant was everybody that went in after the red flag just flipped from what they'd started the race on. So all the people that started on the mediums got to flip to the hard now and be able to do the whole race on the hard easily. People like Lewis and others that had started on the hard had to flip to the medium, and that did become. They were those three. It was Max, Lewis, and George were three mediums, and they. Because they were nursing so much at the beginning, you could see all the hard drivers behind were kind of just getting backed up by it. But then Alonso did it even more to be able to allow Stroll a free pit stop. So you're right.
Stroll then biffed 2 laps later by popping his left rear tire because he hit the wall coming out of the tunnel at the chicane.
Which actually...
Lance Tiffy.
I thought it was all on him, but then on the commentary team they said, look, the problem he's got there is that he's been driving around with certain grip levels.
Which is on him, though.
Yeah, I know. But like if you heard about it, they said, like, you drive around Monaco, it's like a metronome. You know every little bump, you know every manhole cover, you know everything, and you just rinse and repeat for 78 laps. So yeah, it's on him, but he got caught out by the front biting into the tarmac harder than he had been doing for the previous 45. Yeah, it's on him, but
interestingly, Lewis and Max pitted from the same thing, and they didn't go into the wall. And the Aston Martin looked so bad. It was this again.
So then, he had to come in and pit for softs, and he didn't really... They gambled. It was too early. He was making up time massively at start, and he'll go on and do a few overtakes. But yes, the first overtake we saw was just after Hamilton had come in for hards, and Max followed suit, and kind of they were now the pacey ones catching George. And then we saw an overtake, lap 54. Bottas overtook. I don't even know who he overtook. I was just so happy we'd seen
Logan. I think I can't even remember either. I freaked out too.
they just flashed up the Overtake Award on the bottom right of the screen as well. I think, are you joking? Is this some sort of TV direction?
We haven't had one on-track non-start overtake.
So at this point on lap 54, Bottas was guaranteed. So we do have to discuss who had the best pass, because there were like at least two more. So then you kind of had like Russell holding station now. It's 58 laps in. He's either got to go now and use up the free pit stop that he's got. If he waits too much longer, Max and Lewis will have eradicated that gap, because they were flying at this point. I think Max and Lewis were trading fastest lap at this point because they were just flying along. They don't need to make any tyres last, and they're coming after George. And then we saw Stroll took Zhou in the tunnel, which I've got to be honest was a very good overtake.
It was. I think that was actually the best one.
I think that was probably the best one. And then he took Sargent right after on the next lap. So yeah, Stroll had two back to back. And this is the bit where they kind of said, I think Jensen almost implied the Max hesitated when he shouldn't have done, because the differential of Max charging down after George, they said he's probably, if you've got half a moment to take it and launch one, in Monaco, you have to, because if you hesitate about it and wait, there might not be another one that comes. And Max got into his DRS and was down to ridiculously amount and probably could have attacked a bit harder. And then they went through that cycle where he'd attacked a little bit. They told him he had to back off and let his brakes cool down. And after that one, we never saw him go close ever again.
Yep.
He had to make hay while the sun shone in that little window, and it just didn't happen. So then I'd say we got to the final 10, where I was just now thinking, oh, what's going to go wrong for
I know,
Charles?
I felt the same.
I'm like, and actually, the other week when Piastri was on an absolute charge and Lando was winning, and they came over the radio and they were like, yeah, you might want to calm down, Oscar, because Lando's winning. We don't want a red flag or safety car to ruin it all. At this point, Sainz looks like he decided that he'd been in Oscar's DRS for the first 10 laps, then he'd backed off and he'd been all the way back to about 4 seconds behind him. With 10 laps left to go, Sainz is like, right, okay, I fancy second spot on the podium here.
I'm going to see if I can actually touch his gearbox with my front wing.
It wasn't even like just in the DRS. He camped out in about 0.2 to 0.3 seconds behind Oscar for the rest of the race now. And I'm thinking, if you go a little bit hot into a corner here on your aging tyres and either take yourself out or clip him and we get some kind of safety car, I mean, and for whatever reason then Charles doesn't win this thing, this is on you, Carlos. Just be careful here.
And he'd been great all weekend about maximizing Charles' chances as well. You heard him on the radio, like, Charles could be in jeopardy, and before the race, even after quali, we got to make sure we get Charles home first, and this, that, and the other. Really, I thought Carlos played a great team game. But you're right, I hadn't thought of that. He was all over Oscar. And by the way, wasn't it in Miami where the two of them tangled, where Carlos folded up Oscar's front wing like origami?
Oh, yeah, that was Miami.
Wasn't it at the end of the straight? I think so. I think the two of them are kind of developing a little bit of a ding-dong battle for those who listened last week.
So then we had, thankfully it didn't become the commentator's curse, but with about 4 laps to go, the commentary team are coming on going, oh, this is Charles Leclerc's greatest day, all he's got to do. And then Charles came over the radio and said, I'm just going to bring this home now. And I was like, oh my gosh, all these people are just talking as if this is a done deal. And I was just waiting for something to go bang. But it didn't. It was brilliant.
Great.
When he did the team radio, first off, the cheer was amazing. It's almost like the polar opposite of the no, the famous no when he crashes. This is now at the opposite end of the spectrum for that. I've never heard somebody cheer so much for a race.
I'll have to download. I have the no here. Like you're talking about this one.
Yes.
From France.
Yep. This is at the opposite end of that emotional spectrum. I mean, you can hear the emotion in the celebration. It was amazing. But when they started talking about everybody staying around for the party, no one's going home tonight, Charles. He's like, oh, it's just like, it's just such a good feel-good factor, I think. I don't think you could not cheer for Charles, even if you're, say, a Max fan or whatever. I just think it was brilliant.
In 2 of the last 3 races, we've had winners that are incredibly popular. And I'm not saying that Max isn't popular. What I'm saying is we've watched Max win a lot. But when you watch Lando win his first ever race, and he'd had the most podiums, tied for the most podiums without a win.
Yep.
And he'd had opportunities earlier in his career, especially Russia, 21 and other places. That was hugely popular. And Crofty mentioned this, but this would be probably equally as popular in the paddock as well. And while it's not Charles's first win by any stretch, he clearly has had a curse at his home race. 3 DNFs, a fourth and a sixth, and the fourth was bad with bad strategy that took him out of a chance to win that. So he's had bad luck at his home races, even in F2. So I was so happy for this. I literally, my eyes welled up a little too, because you could hear what it meant to him as he was in the cool-down room saying he thought of his father, and his father who's long since passed, and what he did for him. And I watched on the YouTube on a lot of the different stories of Charles's life, and in particular when Carlos first paired up with him and they drove around Monaco, and Charles pointed out, where he grew up and my school, and this is where my mom works, and he didn't grow up rich, which is strange for Monaco. He grew up kind of working class, and you just have to, and he's lost so many people in his life, other drivers who've meant things to him, and for his home race to have been so cursed, for him to have broken that curse, for him to have won the race that meant that much, and then to watch the royal family crying with him, for him, in excitement, showering when Prince Albert got his own bottle of champagne and was spraying Charles. I'm like, oh my God. Usually at this point they run out the back so they don't get covered in champagne. And then he's spraying them, and then he's taking a swig out of his bottle of champagne. I'm like, this doesn't get any better than this. And I was excited for this. So this, and you know what? I really think this happened because I predicted his win. On Monday night.
You absolutely blessed him and countered the curse. I mean, the curse was playing on his mind. I don't know if you heard on the commentary where they said, was it Max or somebody had pointed out to Charles that his shoelaces were untied when they were walking through the paddock at some point, and he said, "Well, with my luck around here, I better stop to do these up." So, said in a moment of jest, but obviously, probably does play on his mind in terms of the the curse in inverted commas, or just his general bad luck around here. And when he said in the cool-down room that for the last 4 or 5 laps he couldn't see very well because he was already starting to well up at the emotion of potentially doing it, got me, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, but so we all know that. I was thrilled for Oscar to finish second. He has got a win in him, 100%. I can't see it being too long before he gets a win. Great to see Sainz round out the podium for Ferrari. I just wish there could be 4 steps on the podium because I thought Lando drove impeccably as well to keep with them. Those 4 would... Ferrari and McLaren were just in a class of their own this weekend. Just absolutely way outside. What else did we have? We've got to give shout-outs. We obviously had George and Max and Lewis came in. But then, the 3 last point scorers, you've already mentioned Gasly, but Yuki and Albon, Yuki and Alex, sticking in there, not making any mistakes, doing what was needed to do. That's 3, unless, from a selfish perspective, because he's a friend of the show, I don't think I could have been happier unless, say, Valtteri had got in on the points as well. But I like the 3 that kind of got in and got those points today.
I agree 100%. It was great to watch them do this. Yuki, we've said this now for a couple races, is continuously in that points hunt, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. He's always there, continuously. After the first couple races where he has a little freak out with Danny Rick, he's calmed down significantly. And, I mean, unless Red Bull and or junior sister team RB aren't paying attention, they have to think that Yuki is by far the better and more consistent driver than Danny Rick at this point. Yeah,
I mean, we've said a few times that, like you said, ever since that freak out, something seems to have happened to Yuki where he's just kind of gone, okay, I know what I need to do here, and just seems to have gone about his business. After today now, he's sitting 10th in the Drivers' Championship on 19 points, and Danny Rick's down in 14th on 5. I mean, he's...
That's pretty darn good.
It really is when you kind of look at the thing. I mean, the result today means that I haven't gone back and done the stats to see how far clear Max was at this time last year when we were already talking about how long will it be before he laps the field. I know I don't think we're going to get a title race on our hands this year, but Charles is now 138 to Max's 169. Yes, it's still more than a race win away, but it's not the scale that it has been.
Right.
And then you've got Lando, Carlo, and in 3rd and 4th, and Checo's just dropping like a stone.
But the constructors, because Checo's dropping like that stone, the constructors are 24 points apart.
Yes.
Red Bull's on 276, Ferrari on 252. I mean, it is, and McLaren is also gaining points continuously, 184. So I don't know. I'm more pleased with the season than I thought I was going to be at this point. And yes, this race to me, to close my recap, was ruined on lap 1 by K-Mag. It was interesting to watch the Alpines and the Checo, K-Mag, Nico, and Carlos and Oscar, but then no one had to pit after that. So basically the top 10 continued on the same way the whole way. And so it was a boring race, but I love that Charles won it. I did honestly I came upstairs, told my wife, I'm like, Charles won his home race. And she's like, what? So she didn't really care.
Come on, then, let's do our King of the Pits and Pits then.
We shall do it. King of the Pits first this week.
Hey, you're the king of the pit.
All right. I think I went first last week, so you can go first this week, Mr. Vale.
Charles.
Yeah. Done. Moving on to the pits. I agree 100%. If it's anyone other than Charles, you didn't watch a race or understand racing. Yeah, now the pits.
You're the pits.
Now this one might be a little more interesting. So, Rob, who do you have as the pits?
Yeah, I think I know who you're going to give it to. And we didn't cover this when we were supposed to earlier, so we can maybe throw it in here. But I think the pits this week is Ocon.
Interesting.
Why on earth? Why are you trying to move in Monaco on a place that traditionally isn't a place that you can really make an overtake stick or at least fly up the inside there? Is part A to this. Part B, when it's your teammate.
Yeah.
I mean, Alpine are not having a great season. You've said this was their moment to shine because the speed differential. They must know that as well. This is about trying to see what many points they can get for the team. Gasman did his job and got some points. Ocon could probably have been there as well. But he's absolutely just gone and pulled off an idiotic move on his teammate, taking himself out of the race, and has then got a reaction from the team principal that I don't think we read out, did we? We forgot to.
We did not. He was very angry and said there would be some impacts to future situation. What do you call it? Future spots or decisions?
Well, it made it almost sound, and the commentary team were kind of like, makes it almost sound like he might lose his seat. They were saying, will he be dropped for next week and bring in somebody else? And they were like, well, his contract's up. This might have just sealed his fate.
Right. This will help us make a decision, I think is what he said.
Yeah. It's like, wow. So if you go and pull an idiotic move so much that it costs you your race seat in F1, then you are the pits in my book.
I have Checo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to give it to K-Mag for ruining your love of pit stops.
No, K-Mag is playing bumper cars at this point. This is like the 14th race in a row where he's done something dumb. I'm sorry. I don't think K-Mag will be back at Haas next year. I just don't. Or in F1. I think I don't know what's happening. It's the first lap. You're battling for like 17th or 18th. Simmer down now. And so that was bad. I'm giving it to Checo because to me, again, Monaco is at least set up for the win on a Saturday. You don't win it on a Saturday, but you can lose it on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And everyone says it's about first corners, but for Monaco, it's Saturday. And he qualified horrendously. And there was no other reason. And I know the Red Bull wasn't the world beater here, the domination machine we've seen. Max was still 6th. Checo was like 18th or 19th. Dang, man, that's bad. And I know the Haas boys ruined my whole fantasy year all in one go. And they ended up, starting behind him, and he started ahead of the Saubers. So he was, 16th on the grid when it started. But come on, man. You're fighting for your job, and you're a city track specialist. And you do that number 2 on the qualifying day? So for me, it was Checo.
Fair enough.
That said, we did our predictions. Rob was right on one account. He had, I don't think you got it exactly. Oh yeah, you did. You had Lando, Oscar, and Max, I think, in order.
Yeah,
so you had Oscar exactly right at second.
I got Oscar exactly right. I midweek I got 2 ahead of myself from McLaren's pace. I then massively regretted that choice when I saw FP123, and then actually it almost came good. The one I got completely sidetracked by was I didn't see Max struggling as much as he did. So,
and I had Charles winning. Just in case we haven't covered that already. And then I had Max second and Lando third, and neither of those guys were on the podium. So I also only had one right, but it was the top step, and it broke a curse. And I still think it's better than my other couple predictions. But regardless, let's hear from Paul. Paul sent us in a clip on Saturday after quali, and I haven't heard it yet because I didn't know
brilliant.
It was in the inbox. But
brilliant.
Let's hear from Paul, as usual. All right, I cannot wait to hear Paul's Saturday review.
Hey now, so I'm going to be clever, which might shock some of you. It certainly shocks me. It's Saturday night. It is 9 minutes past 11, and I am going to do the race review for Monaco. If there's a part two to this, then this really doesn't work, but I'm going to attempt it because, in theory, the race was today with qualifying. So let's start realistically. It's been a fairly steady weekend. A bit of rain about on Thursday for some of like the Formula 2, Formula 3 runners, which caused a bit of carnage for them. But as far as F1, it's been pretty normal. Red Bull have struggled a little bit around here, which is unusual. Ferrari and McLaren look great. But there's not really been anything, let's say, hugely significant. A few cars have rubbed the barrier, none more so than our very own Valtteri, who, just got a little bit off the curb, a little bit of a snap rear end, and he must. The wheel did sort of fail quite with minimal contact, but I think sometimes you've just got to, catch these things slightly wrong, and it's enough to damage them. So yeah, look, that's what it is. And then, anything else really significant happened in the practice sessions? Really a few cars with, people testing limits, hitting the barriers. That's sort of expected here. And if we go to qualifying, Perez, that was unusual to see him go out. The thing with Monaco is, look, there's such fine margins in this circuit with getting around it. It's a really small lap, and, you get a lot of traffic, a lot of... if you want to call them blocking, some of them are really unintentional. It's just the nature of what this place is. I don't know if you saw any of the Formula 2 highlights. I believe it was qualifying with Hajar, and he nearly had a huge accident in the tunnel just because some car basically was having some technical... I'm sure you might well have seen it or spoke about it. If not, find it. It's very scary because that could well have been a lot more of a severe incident. Obviously, my point being is that's just sort of what happens at this circuit. Cars can't get out of the way, so it is what it is. Red Bull seems to have struggled all weekend, so in all fairness, it's, there's not like from their side you can really do with that. It's just nature, if you want to call it that. Then, apart from that, like I said, both of our cars were out at the bottom. To be honest, we just got no race pace. Then Haas, obviously, are under investigation. I'm not sure if that's been cleared because of some rear wing issues, which is a shame because they've looked pretty decent over the weekend. And then, Alpine up there as well. But obviously not seeing Max on pole position is great just because it gives us some else. Can Leclerc finally break his curse of Monaco? So, we're going to wait and see tomorrow. My prediction is that the top 10 will finish in that exact order that they started. I think Leclerc wins the race. I think Piastri finishes second. And, as it goes. I'm going to be bold and say the top 5 will sort of finish in the same position. Unless there's some rain around, and even at that, it's just, it's down to tyre strategies. So let's see. If you hear no more off of me tomorrow night, then this proves to be correct. I am a genius, and we go on to Canada. If you hear from me an extended one of this, it proves that, even the greatest can be wrong. And let's be fair, looking at my fantasy results, I am far from the greatest because I suck at that more than you can ever imagine. Oh well, I may speak soon. If not, see you in Canada.
That was
amazing.
Epic. That was so good.
So I listened to that yesterday when he sent it through, and I was like, he shouldn't have talked himself out of the top 10. When he said, I think the top 10 will finish in exactly the same order. And then he said, maybe the top 5 will finish. I think I've seen a stat somewhere that the top 10 finished today in the same order they started is the first time it's ever happened in Formula One. I think it's the top 6 is the most it's
I'd
ever
heard
been.
about 6, they said, 5 or 6, yeah.
So he absolutely nailed it, 100%, and nobody will be shocked to hear that we did not get another recording from Paul because he did not need to submit one. So,
yeah.
Wow.
Paul, great report as always. Fantastic. We don't, since we're recording this right after the race, no time to go get stats, but I already mentioned one, that this is by far, by 20 miles an hour, slower than any other track on the circuit, so it wasn't a surprise to see Alpine get their second point. And then the only one that I would highlight that, and I did not know the top 10 thing has never happened before, but as I said, just doing the math, it was the top 10 were the same the whole way. That was fascinating. Sean Kelly believes, the virtual statman, that the double lap 1 retirement for Haas now means that Williams are the only team left on the current grid who have never lost both cars on in the opening lap of a Grand Prix. And I'll be honest with you, I think Logan is willing to make that happen if Albon will get in it with him. So we'll see if they
he
can.
He drove well today, Logan. Actually,
he did all right. He
did
did all right.
So,
yeah.
Well,
and then
places.
fantasy. We already talked about this. It was an utter disaster for my team. I don't know if it's recoverable in the end. Rob says I'm being a Debbie Downer, saying that my whole season is ruined.
You said season over. Like we've got
70 points.
Many races left yet. And
that's half a week worth of points for some people. I just gave away because I trusted in Haas to do something okay.
So I went on to Fantasy Hub and Fantasy HQ did a live YouTube video just before the lock-in for the points, and I was kind of umming and ahhing whether I kept Max or not. And then Terry came on F1 Coffee Corner, so all 3 of those guys we've had on, and they were kind of going through the various things as to what you could have. So I did it. I pulled the trigger, and I ended up with Charles Leclerc as my main driver with ×2. I have Yuki, Danny Rick, Albon, and Bottas as my drivers, and McLaren and Ferrari as my 2 constructors. So I dodged a bullet by dropping my Red Bull constructor and Max, actually. So yeah, I think I'm going to have a pretty decent week for once. I'm going to be somewhere up near the top. When I looked after quali, I was 3rd. I had 79 points after quali. So we'll see.
I had 31 points after quali because I had negative 15 for Magnussen, negative 15 for Hulkenberg. I have Yuki and Joe. Charles, I believed in Charles, so I doubled him. And I had Ferrari and Red Bull because I wasn't willing to give up Max some coverage of him going forward. So that was me kind of keeping Red Bull for Canada and beyond. I thought that made sense. And so I'm going to get hosed. I don't even know. I am in one other league, in Michael Cronje's league, and I do have Ferrari, McLaren, Charles, Lewis, Logan, and Valtteri, but then I had Hulkenberg. And, it's just the curse of the Haas. I think I'm going to go out and take my blue Haas beanie that they sent me for free. That was of the old colors when I didn't know they'd changed colors, and I'm going to go burn that thing somewhere.
Well, we will pick up the fantasy next week when
yes, when
I think I will have had a better week than you this week.
You're going to crush me. Everybody's going to crush me. I need training wheels going forward. This is a disaster. I don't think it could be any worse. I don't know what else to say. But yes, we will cover that, of course, to all who did well. Tune in next week to hear that, and tune in next week to hear us talk about some other fantasy Formula One, F1 driver news, we don't know what, because it's 2 weeks to Canada.
Preview. We'll have a Canada preview next week. It'd be great if we get somebody on, if someone wants to come on and do the 100 seconds of DRS or the Who Wants to Be a Dirty Sider quiz. If you've been on before and you just want to come and do the quiz, then we don't need to put you through the DRS again. If you don't want to do DRS again, we can just come on and do the quiz. So hit us up this week if you want to be on. And hopefully we can have one of the Dirty Siders next week, plus a Canada preview.
Sounds great. It'll be sad not going to Canada this year around, but that's okay. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. It was an interesting and a very exciting end, and we all celebrate Charles's first win. So exciting. Happy you tuned in and joined us. Can't wait to talk to you in a week's time. Be well, be safe, everybody.